Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today we're going to be talking about some new makeup releases. There have been a lot of really beautiful makeup launches over the last few weeks, especially with Valentine's Day around the corner. Specifically, I'm going to be trying to dupe these new launches within my own collection. I think it's always a really fun exercise to see what I can actually dupe. 9 times out of 10, I do have enough shades in my collection that I can pretty successfully dupe any new makeup release. So let's go ahead and get on into it. The first launch that did catch my eye was the ColourPop Animal Crossing collab. Typically, ColourPop releases don't really grab my attention just because they have so many new releases coming out all the time, but I do have a soft spot for Animal Crossing. I love that game. I did kind of feel a little bit tempted, although I was pretty easily able to talk myself out of it because none of the products looked that unique. So there are 4 quads, some blushes, a super shock shadow, a little like potted glitter shadow, and some lip products. The only one that I feel like I would really want is one of the quads, and it's the one in the shade 5 Star Island. 3 of the shades are kind of pinky, and then there's also a really beautiful shimmery yellow shade. I love yellow eyeshadow, I love pink eyeshadow. The two together are just a beautiful combo. So that one quad did look really, really pretty, but I really didn't have much trouble finding similar shades in my collection. So for that yellow shade, I actually reached into my e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette. There's 2 shimmery yellow shades in here, Gold Rush and Sun Yourself, and I actually mixed those 2 together to create a dupe for the yellow in that palette. And then the other 3 shades, 2 of them I found in my ABH Norvina palette. The matte pink, I used the shade Love. This one is a little bit more muted looking than the one in the ColourPop palette, but close enough. And then the burgundy shade also, I used the shade Passion from Norvina. And then that really pretty like glittery pink shade, I think that looks like a pressed glitter. I'm not positive that it is because I couldn't tell on their website. If it is, that's just one more reason why I wouldn't want this quad. But the shade Vibes from the Urban Decay Stone Vibes palette looks very similar to that one, and it's not a pressed glitter. So yes, I would have to dip into 3 different palettes to dupe all of those shades, but just goes to show I do have some similar shades already in my collection. Also, it looks like the Animal Crossing collection is completely sold out, so can't buy it anyway. But if I am wanting to recreate anything based on that quad, I can totally do that. The only other ColourPop collection that did briefly grab my attention was their new Valentine's collection. There have been quite a few Valentine's Day releases over the last couple of weeks, which I think is really fun. I like Valentine's Day, especially for makeup inspiration. I love pinks and reds, especially like soft romantic pink looks I think are really beautiful. So I'm enjoying the inspiration, but I definitely have enough pinks and mauves in my collection to fill that need. But the ColourPop Valentine's collection, there are 3 5-pan palettes that have come out in that similar packaging that they've been doing recently. It kind of looks like the Natasha Denona 5-pan mini palettes. The only one of these 5 pans that I could see myself using a lot would be the shade Melt For You. And I was able to find similar shades to all 5 of those colors in my Profusion Mauves palette. I definitely need to make a point to pull this out and use it over the next week or 2 with Valentine's Day coming up, because this is just such a beautiful February palette. But the shades that I thought were similar to the ones in the ColourPop 5-pan were Femme, Kindly, Opal, Lovesick, and Explode. So once again, I really can't justify purchasing that ColourPop palette, especially because I have all similar shades in this one palette. I wouldn't even have to dip into multiple palettes to get a similar look. And then Natasha Denona also came out with a Valentine's Day collection, including a mini Love palette that also looks really pretty. It looks similar to those ColourPop 5-pans. I don't think any of the ColourPop palettes were dupes for this, but similar vibe. 3 of those 5 shades I was able to dupe with the Profusion palette, and those were the shades Persona, which is this really pretty mid-toned shimmery pink, Femme, which is a light shimmery pink, and Ballad, which is a dusty purpley mauve. I also think that some of the shades in this e.l.f. Rosewater quad are kind of similar. The one that I swatched was this shade number 3 here, which is another kind of mauvey shimmer. And then for that purpley burgundy shade, I also could have done the deep purple in the e.l.f. Rosewater quad, but I ended up swatching the shade Third Eye from the Urban Decay Stone Vibes palette, which looks super similar. That kind of deep plummy matte I have multiple times over in my collection, so I definitely don't need another one of those, especially because I feel like shades like that all go on the eye looking pretty similar. So while I can appreciate that Natasha Denona palette, I think it's really pretty, I also definitely don't need it. I have a lot of pinks and mauves in my collection, seeing as it's one of my favorite colors to wear on my eyes, as you can see today. Today I'm wearing the Aether Beauty Ametrine Quad on my eyes. Loving that. Another new launch that's been getting a lot of buzz recently is Samantha Ravndal's new brand called Auric. And I gotta say, these products look beautiful. The product in particular that really speaks to me right now is the Smoke Reflect Eye Duos. It looks like it is a cream eyeshadow and then a glittery topper. I love the idea of a simple like two-step eyeshadow look. And the shades that I love the most are Temper, which is a rose gold, and Ego, which is a kind of gunmetal-y silver. Rose gold is actually sold out, so I can't get that right now anyway. This is a brand that I think I probably will eventually try. I did see that they are Logical Harmony approved as cruelty-free, which is awesome. So I'm interested in the brand. I think eventually I may pick something up, but I don't feel an urgent need to try anything. So for now, I really don't have anything quite like this, where it's like a cream and a topper duo, but I do have similar shades in my collection. So for the shade Ego, which is that kind of grayish silver, I think there are two shades in my Aether Rose Quartz palette that are similar. Again, not the same formula. I'm not comparing formulas because I haven't tried these, obviously. But the shades are Astarte and Crystalline, and I did swatch them separately and one on top of the other, and I do feel like the effect is similar, and now I really want to do a look with those two and just kind of have it be like a simple smoky eye look, because I'm really into those kind of grayish smoky looks lately. And then for the shade Rose Gold, I have a lot of rose gold eyeshadows in my collection, but the ones in particular that I swatched to compare were Rose Gold and Dreamer from my ABH Norvina palette. Once again, completely different formula, I'm sure, but this Rose Gold shade looks to have a similar kind of mauve-y brown undertone to the Auric cream shadow base, and then the shade Dreamer is like a light rose gold topper. So I think those would be really pretty layered on top of one another on my eyes. That's one of the launches that I think I may eventually pick up, and I'm also just going to be keeping an eye on this brand for future releases because I definitely like the vibe and I love Samantha, so I'd love to eventually purchase something, but I don't feel like I need to like right now. And I think that's kind of the theme of this video, is like appreciating new releases without also feeling the need to purchase them all. And then the fifth and final new release that I wanted to talk about today is the newest Urban Decay Naked palette. This was announced a few days ago, and it is their Naked Wild West palette. I've been seeing a lot of mixed reactions on this. Some people are like, what? You know, like Wild West, what is that? And other people are like, hey, you know, I kind of like this. I am somewhere in the middle. I think when I first saw it, I was like, what? Especially because it looks like a palette that I feel like would have launched in like 2018 with the pop of blue. It's really like a blue-green, so it's not quite a pop of blue, but I just remember a few years back, it seemed like every brand was launching a neutral palette with a pop of blue, and so I was like, what is this? And so that was the first thing that kind of confused me, and then I'm also like, why Wild West? You know, does that seem kind of random to anybody else? Aside from the theme of the palette, the color story, the more I look at it, the more I kind of like it. It's kind of a warm, grungy neutral palette, and I do like the kind of turquoisey shades in there. Turquoise is one of my favorite colors, not necessarily just for eyeshadow, but in general. I love kind of turquoise and like blue-green colors. I think they're really pretty. So the more I look at it, the more I don't mind it. Now, this is one that I think I'm actually going to be receiving this in PR. Urban Decay, the way they do their PR list is they send out an email where you can opt in, and usually they won't tell you exactly what it is. This time they just said, and this was a few weeks ago, they said, if you like our Naked line, then you'll definitely want to opt in. I assumed it was going to be a new Naked palette, but I had no idea what it was going to look like, so I did want to go ahead and try to dupe it anyway, just to see if I could, because outside of those like turquoisey shades, I don't necessarily think that the colors in here are all that unique. I will say I really like the taupes and the silver. Those were kind of like, I do love some like cool taupey silvers. So for this one, I actually was able to pretty much dupe every shade except for one, with 3 of my ABH palettes. A lot of those neutrals are similar to ones in Sultry, Subculture, and Modern Renaissance. And then for that one, the one shade in here that I couldn't quite dupe was the shade Bud, which is that lighter shimmery kind of aqua blue-green. And for that one, I ended up mixing 2 of my single eyeshadows. I mixed Makeup Geek Pegasus and ColourPop La Playa. So Pegasus is a much brighter blue, and then La Playa is like a light mint green. And together I felt like they look similar, but that's the one shade I don't quite have anything like. And then for all the other neutrals, I did have similar shades in these 3 ABH palettes. That being said, I would have to be dipping into 3 palettes plus a single eyeshadow to get the same shades. So I am excited to try it out and see what those shadows do look like in person, because I feel like I can't quite tell what that minty green is going to look like in person. It may be kind of like a duochrome shade, and same with the silver. So many comments on this Trend Mood post are like, they just need to drop the naked line. We need to normalize moving on. Like, people are tired of the naked line, which I kind of do understand, especially if you're like immersed in the online beauty community. The naked series does seem a little bit overdone at this point. But what I'm thinking is, I'm guessing the naked line, the reason why they're still putting out naked palettes is because for the average consumer, I think that the Urban Decay naked palettes are kind of like a staple for a lot of people. I know, like, when I was in high school, the original Urban Decay naked palette came out, and like everybody and their mom had that palette. That was like the neutral palette that kind of started it all. And so I think for a lot of people, the naked line is exactly what they're looking for just like everyday neutral shadow looks. I think Urban Decay is probably just making a smart business decision by continuing with the naked palettes, even though for a lot of us who like to really experiment with eyeshadows and use a lot of fun colors, like maybe the naked series seems a little bit boring at this point. But I kind of like that they've been playing around with different kind of color themes sprinkled into the naked line. They're kind of like neutral palettes for people that want to start dipping their toe into color. Again, I feel like the Naked Wild West theme is just a little out of left field, but the packaging looks really pretty, and I'm not necessarily mad at the color story. But I was actually really impressed by how closely I was able to dupe that Wild West palette with shadows I already own. But I think those are all of the eyeshadow releases that I wanted to talk about today and see what I could dupe with my collection. Most of these I was able to pretty closely dupe. The one thing that I'm still kind of like itching to get my hands on are the Auric shadow duos. I just think those are really pretty, but I'm gonna continue watching some reviews and thinking about it, and maybe in the future I would pick those up. But anyway, I think that is it for today's video. I do have a playlist of videos like this that I've done in the past if you want to check that out. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hopefully will talk to you in my next video.